In the months before the Goa opinion poll of 1967, the decision about Goa's future had already begun taking shape. Not at polling booths, but through words. This wasn't just a political campaign, it was a battle of ideas. And newspapers were right at the center of it. This was a time before televisions. Radio reach was far too minimal. Print was what mattered. Newspapers informed people, but more importantly, they shaped opinion. Different papers reached different sections of society, and together they set the tone for the opinion poll.
Press played a very important role, and we had four major publications: Konkani, English, Marathi and Portuguese. And all these papers played very effective role. They were either mergerists or they were against merger. Now the mergerist papers were Gomantak, Gomantwani and Pradeep. Now these newspapers carried a strong propaganda for merger on the basis of language. Gomantak at that time was edited by Satoskar, and this paper was basically created for the purpose of merger, and it was started by the Chogle company. Rashtramat was a paper that was started by the House of Salgonkars, and it was started with one purpose, like to hit the enemy with his own weapon. Now Gomantwani and Pradeep, they had only one objective, agenda, and that was to make Marathi the official language and Vilnikaran, that is merger. But the founders of these newspapers, that especially the Gomantwani, played a very important role in contributing financially to the campaign of opinion poll. At that time, the main newspaper was Navin Time, which was started by the House of Bhembro. And this paper was taking a very light stand or a soft stand. It didn't want to lean very, strongly one side. Then coming to the Portuguese papers, of course these papers were read by the elite of Goa, this mostly Christian population. But they were carrying on a strong propaganda in favor of union territory status and mostly for a separate state. Now Avida at that time was edited by Father Lucio, who was the real mouthpiece maybe of the church, because church also had a stake. And then you have O Heraldo, which is a very old paper, but a very respected paper. And this newspaper again was supporting the cause of separate status. And see, their argument was, what would be Goa in a bigger state like Maharashtra? It would be a district of Maharashtra. So, and you would lose your identity, you would lose your language, you would lose your culture, and Marathi would be imposed. So maybe for some people, Marathi might be okay, but those who do not know Marathi, it was a total fear, that they would be completely marginalized and out of the system. Whereas their argument was, you remained exclusive and isolated. Now you will enter the mainstream. By joining Maharashtra, you get into the mainstream. That was the main focus of these Marathi papers, like Gomantwani, Gomantak and Pradeep.
By then, one newspaper already had a strong presence, Gomantak. Its influence was felt across large parts of Goa. So when a response was needed, it had to be just as strong and just as direct. That response came in the form of Rashtramat.
Soon after liberation, in 1962, daily Gomantak, the Marathi newspaper, was started. And it fiercely propagated for merger of Goa with Maharashtra. There was no other newspaper, at least in Marathi, which could counter it. And the other newspapers that were there did not take a firm stand on this issue. As a result, some young men from Margao, felt that there should be a periodical at that stage to counter the arguments made by Gomantak. So they approached Chandrakant Keni, and because they knew that he was a writer and he was already publishing a fortnightly, Triveni. Chandrakant Keni, after listening to them, said that a fortnightly would not be the right thing, and to counter the propaganda made by a daily newspaper, you need a daily. And they contacted some mine owners. They formed a partnership. There were 7 of them belonging to 3 different families. If I may mention those families, they are Salgaonkar, Timlaw, and Shantilal Kushaldas. So there were 7 partners altogether in a partnership firm, Navagomanta Prakashan, which decided to publish a daily. The name was decided as Rashtramat. About 98% of Hindu community was almost for merger, or was not at least opposing merger. So unless you convert a part of them, it was difficult to win in the opinion poll, because the Catholic society was about 35%. And Rashtramat did make a dent in the sense we saw the response from the Hindu community, and it was encouraging. But there have been different phases of that kind of journalism.
Within Rashtramat, one column quickly stood out. It did not soften its words. It did not sit on the fence. It spoke straight to the reader. Brahmastra.
One of the columns was Brahmastra, and it was being written under the name Parshuram. There was also a picture of Parshuram there. It was mainly Anna Ponce who was taking much of the pains for editing, for overseeing the whole thing. After Rashtramat began from 1st September, he was there for about a month or month and a half, and then it was time for him to go back. At that time he said, Uday, now you have to write this column. Now when Anna Ponce was writing, he was dealing with local issues as well as national issues and also international issues. When I started to write it, I restricted my writing to local issues only, because it was necessary to counter each and every argument that was being made in favor of merger. And there were different kinds of arguments. Language was a major issue, but history, geography, culture, economic viability were also there. So on each of these topics, one had to write, and that was very crucial at that time, because we realized that people are confused. Many people are confused. They do not know what will be good for Goa and Goans. So we slightly changed our strategy and began to enlighten them on these issues rather than hitting them. Exactly, that became the main plank, making them aware of what would be the difficulties if Goa gets merged, what they would lose by getting Goa merged into Maharashtra, and what they will gain by opposing merger. And that helped us. That helped us a lot.
What really set Rashtramat apart was where it reached. It didn't stay within closed circles. It traveled. It traveled into homes, into everyday conversations, into public thinking.
राष्ट्रमत हे दिसाळेच फुडें आयलें आनी राष्ट्रमतान कोंकणीची कोंकणी ही भाशा आनी गोंय हें संघराज्य वचपा जाय, महाराष्ट्रांत वचपा जायना हो प्रचार सुरू केलो. सगळें चित्र अशें आशिल्लें की सगळे क्रिश्चन महाराष्ट्रवादाच्या विरोधी आशिल्ले, पूण जवळ जवळ 40% म्हणत 60% हिंदू महाराष्ट्रवादाच्या वटेन आशिल्ले अशें चित्र आशिल्लें. त्या हिंदूंक हेवटेन व्हरपा खातीर राष्ट्रमतान मोलाची कामगिरी बजायली. आनी ओपिनियन पोलांत अशें आमकां लक्षांत आयलें कुडचडें, वाळपय आनी हिंदू बहुल वाठारांनी ओपिनियन पोलाच्या विरोधी म्हणजे संघ प्रदेशा वटेन हें दिलें. म्हणटकीर राष्ट्रमताची ही फक्त मोलादीक कामगिरी. तेन्ना सोशल मिडिया नाशिल्लें, इंटरनेट नाशिल्लें. राष्ट्रमत आतां हें सांगप कठीण रे, पूण राष्ट्रमतान शेवटी अशी एक प्रचार केलो की बांदोडकाराक खूब सिंपाती आशिल्ली असो एक प्रचार केलो. आनी तो प्रचार खंय लोकांक सामको पटलो, खुद्द बांदोडकाराक पटलो की गोंय जर महाराष्ट्रांत गेले, बांदोडकार एक सादो आमदार आनी सादो एक राज्यमंत्री किंवा मंत्री, तेन्ना बांदोडकार जर तुमकां मुख्यमंत्री जाय जाल्यार गोंय स्वतंत्र दवरात. सो एक विचार तांणी बांदोडकाराक वचून फक्त कितें जाता, राष्ट्रमत हें फक्त दिसाळें छापून न्ही, ती एक मुवमेंट जाली. राष्ट्रमताच्या म्हऱ्यांत तांचो एक रावताले ताका राष्ट्रमठ म्हणटात. त्या राष्ट्रमठांत राज्य हे सगळे मेळटाले. चंद्रकांत केणी, मागीर उदय बाब, जनार्दन फळदेसाय, नारायण मावजो हे सगळे जमताले.
As the opinion poll drew closer, public opinion was being shaped between two strong voices. One that had already built influence and another that had reason to challenge it. Together, these newspapers played a major role in how people viewed the choice before them.
पहिलो पेपर गोंयान आयलो पळय आफ्टर लिबरेशन, ताजे पयलीं गोंयान एक पोर्चुगीज पेपर आसतालो, गोंयान भितर आसलो. म्हणजे कॉपी लिमिटेड आसताले आनी तो फक्त जे कोण पोर्चुगीज जाणा तांकां कळटा अशें शिकलेले तांकां. जेन्ना गोमंतक आयलो पळय मार्च गुडीपाडव्याक 1962 तेन्ना लोकांक एक वाचपाक नवें दिसतालें. जो गडकरी संपादक आशिल्लो पळय तो खूब पयलीं पाद सातोस्कर आशिल्लो, मागीर गडकरी आयलो. गडकरीची लेखणी इतली पावरफूल आशिल्ली की तो जे कितें बरयतालो पळय तेजो ते खोटें सुद्दां आसलें न्ही, तें लोकांक खरेंच दिसतालें तें. आनी तशें गोंयान घडलें. सगळीकडे जेन्ना ओपिनियन पोलचो विशय आयला पळय तेन्ना गोमंतकाची भुमिका स्ट्रॉंग मर्जर आसली. इवन तांचो ओनर चौगले आसली तांची तीच आसली. आनी गोंयांतले सामान्य मनीस जे आसले, बहुसंख्य हिंदू जे आसले बहुजन समाजाचे तांकां दिसतालें की आमी जर महाराष्ट्रांत गेले जाल्यार आमी बरें जातलें म्हणून. आनी त्या खातीर प्रत्येक जाणाचें हें आसलें. पूण जालें कितें, गोमंतकाची भुमिका आयकून बरेच लोकांचें मत परिवर्तन जालें. खंयचोय सामान्य मनीस जी भाशा वाचता खंय, लेख वाचता खंय, रोखडोच चेंज जातालो. आनी ताचो परिणाम असो जालो की गोंयांतली जी सादारणता म्हणजे ग्रामीण जो भाग आहा पळय जे मराठी वाचक आशिल्ले आनी तेन्नाचे आमचे वाचक आसताले ते तितले सुशिक्षीत नासताले, वाचपाक येतालें तांकां दुसरे तिसरे शिकून. तर तेंच्यांनी एक प्रकारचें हें जाल्लें की आतां एक गोवा मध्य जातलोच म्हणून.
In Marathi, there was a tradition. Marathi was mainly in Maharashtra, Goa, and parts of Karnataka in the border areas. If you had to start a newspaper, the masterhead of the newspaper has to be made by Balasaheb Thackeray. That was the tradition because he was a cartoonist and he was a very good artist. So that was the tradition. Now Balasaheb Thackeray was for the merger, but these people went to him and he prepared that masterhead of Rashtramat, okay, and gave it to fight against his own viewpoint against the merger, and they started this. In our house, we were getting two papers, Gomantak and Rashtramat. My father, my mother, and others were reading it. Others were also reading it. Ramakant Kalab says that in Pedne, people used to sit around and one person used to read Rashtramat and all others were listening, and after that they used to discuss it. And that is how the opinion changed. The role of the media, if you ask me, in the whole history of any struggle in India, okay, then Rashtramat is a landmark. The media which played the role and Rashtramat which played the role and changed the opinion And finally we won the opinion poll where this whole Bahujan Samaj opinion was changed by Rashtramat, and Gomantak failed in that sense. Okay, because Gomantak was the opinion maker. Gomantak bole, Goa chale. That was the situation in those days. Whatever Gomantak says, people used to blindly believe it. But not in this case. It is not money which plays role in our elections, major role. It is not caste, not at all. The caste does not play role. Religion does not play role, but opinion plays the role. And that foundation was laid down in Goa during opinion poll, where Gomantak and Rashtramat played this role, and people are used to listening to and reading to different opinions, and through that making their own opinion.
For those who were there, the opinion poll is still a clear memory. The days before it, the talk, the wait.
In the sense. Now, some people think that there was a common plank or common platform or a kind of a federation between all the groups or parties. No. In fact, 5 different groups were working to oppose merger. 2 of them were political parties. The biggest group was United Goans, of course. The other group was Congress party. Excluding a few congressmen, the rest of the Congress party was opposing merger. These were the 2 political parties. The third group was our group, which was called either Rashtramat group or Kokniwadis. Fourth group was Prabhudesai's Sangha Pradesh Jyot, which went around the whole of Goa and did create a quite proper atmosphere. And the fifth was Ullas Bhuyaun's Kalapatak, Gomanda Kalapatak. That was to counter the Kalapataks which were coming from Maharashtra. Yeah, Shahir Amar Sheikh and Shahir Sabre. These 2 Kalapataks were being brought. Yes, but the important part of this is that although there were 5 groups and although they never came together, there was no antagonism of any kind between them. They worked independently but gave the same message to the people.
सांगपाचें म्हणल्यार जेन्ना गोंयांत ओपनिंग पोल जालो पळय तेन्ना हांव राय ह्या गांवांत म्हणजे 700 गांवांत हांव शिकपाक आसलो. म्हजो भाव थंय रावतालो, फॅमिली रावताली आमची थंय. आनी आख्ख्या गांवांत राय आनी रासोली जी 2 राय आनी रायतूच म्हणटाले आमी तेन्ना, ही 2 जीं गांवां आसलीं पळय ह्या गांवांत आमचें एकूच अशें घर आशिल्लें वॉज ओपन दीस सपोर्टींग मर्जर. जालें कितें, जेन्ना आमचें शॉप आसलें म्हाज्या भावाचें कपड्यांचें, त्या शॉपाचेर आमी एक कॅलेंडर लायिल्लो, फुलाचो कॅलेंडर. दॅट वॉज अ सिंबल ऑफ मर्जर. म्हणजे इतली सामकें लोकांनी कांय हें करूं ना. ज्या दिसा वोटींग जालें, कावंटींग जालें, जेन्ना रिजल्ट आयलो पळय तेन्ना एक ग्रूप आयलो 10-15 लोकांचो आनी आमचे शॉप आसलें पळय हातूंत 2-4 पेटार उडयले पेटोवन आनी ते गेले. पण एक गोश्ट अशी आसली की आमकां कसले त्रास करूंक ना, कांय झगडी करूंक ना, कांय ना.
Today, after 6 decades of the opinion poll, the fight looks different. But at its heart, it's about the same things. Land, rights, who gets to decide about Goa. Public opinion mattered then, and it still does.
So that is basically, it was a land issue. It was an identity issue. Our land, our identity should be retained. Okay. And if you ask me in last 60 years what has happened, is that the best live example I would give you is of Justice Feridin Rebello. People want to know exactly what to do, where opinion matters. Justice Rebello is giving an opinion and people are supporting that opinion. So that opinion thing matters till today, and that has been proved. And to fight the issue of identity, to fight the issue of land, and to protect our land, everything, people are coming forward from 66 till date. This is happening.
आमची प्रुडंट जावं किंवा हे आसात सद्याचे जी दिसाळी आसात ताची खूब मोलादीक हें अशें म्हाका दिसता की गव्हर्मेंटाक भिना आसतना गव्हर्मेंटाचे आमकां जायराती येतात, गव्हर्मेंटाचें लांगूल चलन न करता ह्या लोकां वटेन उबें रावप हें प्रुडंट करता, हें लोक वो आमचो गोमंतक करता, तें काम तुमी फुडें व्हरपाक जाय, कित्याक हें राष्ट्रमतान तेन्ना केलें.
On 16 January 1967, Goa voted. But by then, opinion had already been formed. Through headlines, through columns, through newspapers. Rashtramat didn't just respond to the moment, it helped shape Janmat. And that made all the difference.